silence. Senator Hughes.
Thank you, Madam President.
Order.
My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Farrell. With core inflation still almost twice the top of the RBA's band, what is the change in real wages, and I emphasise real wages, since Labor came to office?
Thank you, Senator Hughes. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Hughes for her question. And of course, what we know about what's happened since the change of government is that for the first time, you've got a government that's serious about looking after working people in this country. Serious about working people. We don't have a leader. We don't have a leader of the government.
Order.
We don't have a leader of the government who proudly proclaims on television that low wages are a designed feature of the government's policies.
Minister Farrell.
Order. The question was very...
Senator Hughes.
Sorry.
Wait until I call you. Senator Hughes.
Point of order, direct relevance. The question was very narrow and specific with regards to real wages, and now that Senator Watt has handed some talking points over, perhaps Senator Farrell could get back to the question.
Senator Hughes, I am listening careful. Your question went to inflation and wages, and the minister is being responding correctly, and I'll continue to listen carefully. Thank you. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President. Look, you now have a government in this country who is serious about looking after working people in this country. The whole structure of this government's policies has been designed to lift the living standards of Australian workers, lift their living standards, and remove the impediments that you put on people getting decent wage rises. And Senator Hughes, if you were serious about lifting...
Minister Farrell, please resume your seat. Senator Birmingham.
On the question of direct relevance, which is what the Senate standing orders do ask for, direct relevance by the minister. Senator Hughes asked not once but twice to make it clear what has happened to real wages under this government. The minister has not mentioned real wages once in his three-quarters of his answer to date.
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. As I give the same answer as I gave to Senator Hughes, but I will direct Minister Farrell to the second part of that question that related to direct wages. Minister.
An analysis of the ABS data shows that earnings for average full-time workers increased by 3.9% in the first year of the Albanese government. In dollar terms, that means around 300.
Senator Hughes.
Direct relevance. The question was incredibly specific to real wages. Real wages are wage growth affected by inflation, Senator Farrell. Could you please speak to real wages, not ABS data?
Thank you, Senator Hughes. The minister is responding to your question, and I'll call the minister again. Minister Farrell.
Well, thank you, President. And Senator Hughes, can I tell you I've spent a damn sight more of my life working for raising the living standards of Australian and I'm doing that, Senator Birmingham. I'm doing that right now as a government minister.
Thank you, Minister Farrell. I'll just remind you also to direct your responses to the chair and not to the senator asking the question. Senator Hughes, are you standing for your first supplementary?
Yes, I am.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. And Minister Farrell, the reason you've worked for so much longer is you're so much older than me. Minister, can you confirm that last week the ABC Living Cost Index showed that employee households have seen a 9% rise in their living costs over the year? What items are driving up the cost of living pressures for Australians?
Thank you, Senator Hughes. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Hughes for her first supplementary question. And I'll choose not to take advantage of Senator Hughes's youth. I'll choose not to take advantage of your youth in my response to her to her question. Look, there's a whole range of issues that we know are pushing up cost of living. One obvious one is the cost of petrol. But having spent a recent amount of time overseas in recent weeks, these are not issues that are peculiar to the Australian economy. There's a war going on between Russia and Ukraine that's pushing up a whole lot of cost.
Minister Farrell, please resume your seat. Senator Hughes.
Thank you, Madam President. And that was the perfect prelude into my second supplementary. So why is core inflation in Australia higher than in Germany, in France, in Italy, in the United States, in Japan or Canada? After 2 Albanese Labor budget, why is inflation so much worse in Australia when it's so much better in the rest of the world?
Thank you, Senator Hughes. Senator Watt. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President. And I thank Senator Hughes for her second supplementary question. Well, simply because of the mess that you left this economy in after 9 years of incompetent economic management. Now, what did the Albanese government do this year? For the first time in 15 years, we produced a budget surplus, I know you don't want to hear this. I know you don't want to hear. I know you don't want to hear the.
Senator Farrell, resume your seat. Order on my left. Minister, please continue. Senator Sterle.
I know you don't want to hear, but we turned your $70 billion deficit into a...
Minister Farrell, please resume your seat. Senator Birmingham, I'll refer to you. Okay. Senator Birmingham.
Point of order goes to relevance. A question about inflation, and you have to wonder why the government is happy to try to claim the surplus but won't take any responsibility for inflation and cost of living pressures.
Senator Birmingham, that is a debating point, and you know that very well. Minister, please continue.
Thank you, President. And look, what are we doing to push down the cost of living? Well, electricity bill relief, cheaper childcare, increased rent assistance, more Medicare bulk billings, cheaper medicine, boosting income support payments.
Thank you, Minister Farrell. Thank you, Minister. Senator Giacone.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister that's representing the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Senator Watt. Minister, can you... Minister...
Order on my left. Senator Giacone, please continue.
Thanks a lot, President, for that. Minister, can you update the Senate on the situation in the Middle East and how Australia is responding to the humanitarian situation?
Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. I'm surprised that on a matter of this seriousness the opposition continues to maintain their political point scoring. That is rather disappointing. But I thank Senator Giacone for his important question. The humanitarian situation that we are seeing unfold in Gaza is dire and human suffering is widespread. We can all see that on our TV screens, and the government recognises that for many Australians this has a deeply personal connection. Australia has 5 core priorities in this crisis: supporting civilians, helping prevent conflict from spreading and reinforcing the need for a durable peace, all of which we pursue by working with countries that have influence in the region. At the same time, we seek to keep our country unified and assist Australians abroad. Food, water, medicine, fuel and other essential assistance must reach people in desperate need, and civilians, including Australians, must be able to get to safety. Australia has contributed $25 million in aid, but more assistance is required from parties to the conflict if this aid is to reach Gazans. This is why so many countries like Australia have been calling for humanitarian pauses on hostilities as a necessary first step. The attacks on Israel by Hamas were abhorrent and have been described so by the government since day one. We know it is extremely difficult to defeat a craven terrorist group that has burrowed itself in civilian infrastructure, using civilians as a shield. Israel has a right to defend itself, but Israel's friends, including Australia, have consistently emphasised that the way it does so matters. It matters for innocent civilians who should not pay for horrors perpetrated by Hamas, and it matters for Australia's own security, which faces grave risk if conflict spreads. The international community will not accept ongoing civilian deaths and the humanitarian tragedy in Gaza, and Australia will continue working with partners to that effect.
Senator Ciccone, first supplementary.
Thanks a lot, President. Thank you, Minister. Minister, today I read that more than 2,000 people have actually registered with the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and they've been able to leave Israel, West Bank and Gaza. Can the Minister please provide the Senate with an update on efforts to support Australians returning home?
Minister Watt.
Thank you again, Senator Ciccone. I think that all senators would have been pleased that after a weeks-long international push to allow safe passage of civilians from Gaza, the Rafah crossing opened. Of those who crossed the border, 21 were Australian citizens, with 2 permanent residents and 2 family members. They were met by DFAT officials in Egypt, who supported them, including with accommodation and onwards travel. Over the weekend, we saw most of these people return home. This included a family of 4 land in Adelaide and a family of 3 in Melbourne. And about a dozen people flew into Sydney last night, with lots of hugs and tears at the airport. Despite this progress, it is still extremely difficult to get people out of Gaza. DFAT is assisting nearly 80 individuals in Gaza, and we continue to press for them to be allowed to cross the border to safety. This has been a high priority for some time now for Minister Wong and her department, and I know that they'll keep working hard on it.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Ciccone, second supplementary.
Thank you again, President. And it's fair to say it's quite distressing time for many, not just here in Australia, but obviously over in the Middle East. Minister, can you explain to the Senate the government's role internationally and here at home?
Thank you, Senator Ciccone. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. The Australian government is working with our international partners to protect civilians, prevent the conflict from spreading, and ultimately to achieve a lasting and durable peace. At the same time, we are working to keep our country unified, including with a $50 million investment to support communities affected by the Hamas attacks on Israel and ongoing conflict, and assisting thousands of Australians in the Middle East, including more than 2,000 who have returned home to Australia. On Saturday, you may have read the Foreign Minister's op-ed penned for The Guardian that clearly outlined these priorities. It highlighted that Australia is part of the international diplomatic effort, reinforcing the imperative of a just and enduring peace. And that requires a 2-state solution, an Israeli state alongside a Palestinian state. Israelis and Palestinians living securely and prosperously within internationally recognised borders. That is the position we will continue to make.
Answering has expired. Senator Patterson.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Farrell. Media reporting over the weekend has revealed that an Islamic preacher in Sydney delivered a radical sermon that called on Muslims to wage jihad, declared Australia hypocritical for labelling Hamas's massacre of innocent Israelis as terrorism, and claimed Hamas terrorists who committed the October 7 attack on Israel were not terrorists but freedom fighters. Does the government condemn this radical rhetoric?
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Patterson for his questions. I myself didn't see those comments, but I understand that we have made it very clear as a government that we condemn these corrosive and irresponsible statements. Security agencies are aware of these statements, and I understand the New South Wales Police have commenced an investigation into this matter. All Australians should remember what the Director-General of Security recently said about the importance of considering the implications for social cohesion when making public statements. ASIO has seen direct connections between inflamed language and inflamed community tensions. As I said, we condemn these statements. They're corrosive and irresponsible. The security agencies are investigating the statements, as is the New South Wales Police, and we'll await the results of those investigations.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Patterson, first supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. The individual in question reportedly dared the government to deport him for his comments. Will the government take him up on this by immediately cancelling his visa if he is found to have violated his visa conditions?
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Patterson for his first supplementary question. It's been a very consistent, long-standing practice that ASIO does not comment on individuals or investigations, and I'm happy to leave it to the relevant authorities to investigate the matter and to come
Minister
forward
Farrell,
with some advice.
Senator Patterson.
Direct relevance, Madam President. I did not ask about ASIO or any investigations they were conducting, but whether the government would cancel the visa if he's violated the conditions of that visa.
I believe the minister's being relevant. Senator Patterson. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President. Where individuals pose a significant risk to the community, the Australian government will continue to cancel their visas and remove them. But, as is standard practice, and this was a practice adopted by your government, Senator Patterson, so it's a long-standing government practice, government does not comment on individual cases.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Patterson, second supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. Does the government reject inflammatory language and accusations, such as those accusing Israel of genocide?
Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Senator Patterson. The government has made it very clear that it condemns the action of Hamas, a terrorist organisation, and of course we came to this parliament with a joint resolution following the terrible events in Israel as a result of the attack by Hamas. What I do want to reject, though, is the attempts by the opposition to gain political advantage and score political points out of the terrible tragedy that's going on in the Middle East at the moment. Well, and I'm giving you a straight answer.
Senator Patterson.
Thank you, Madam President. Again, on direct relevance, I asked whether the government would condemn those accusing Israel of genocide. The minister has not yet responded to that question.
I believe the minister is being relevant, and had you finished your comments, Minister? Thank you. Senator Faruqi.
My question is to the minister representing the Prime Minister. The State of Israel is carpet bombing Gaza, targeting civilians and committing war crimes for the world to see. So far, Israel has massacred almost 10,000 Palestinians. Gaza has become a graveyard for children. People are watching whole families being blown to bits. Hospitals, schools, mosques, homes, refugee camps have been reduced to rubble. Yet the Labour government continues to shield Israel from any accountability. The UN General Assembly has overwhelmingly called for an immediate ceasefire, a resolution which this government shamefully abstained from. Tens of thousands of people have marched across Australia and are calling for the Australian government to call for an immediate ceasefire. Will the Labour government commit to calling for an immediate ceasefire today?
Thank you, Senator Faruqi. The time for answering has expired. Before I call the minister, I'm going to ask for silence across the chamber. This is a very, very serious issue of which there are many perspectives, and everyone is entitled to their perspective, and the minister is entitled to be heard in silence. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Faruqi for her question. Of course, we have all witnessed devastating loss of innocent life in the Middle East. That, of of course, started with the attack by Hamas on innocent civilians in Israel. We, as a government, have affirmed Israel's right to defend itself after that horrific attack, and we've also said this, and I saw the Foreign Minister reiterate this weekend, that it also matters in the way in which Israel responds to this completely unjustified attack by Hamas. This means that Israel must observe international law and the rules of war.
Minister Farrell, please resume your seat. I called for silence. That message is intended for every single senator in this place, including you, Senator Shoebridge, and I believe you, Senator McKenzie. Minister, please continue.
Nobody wants to see innocent lives lost in this terrible set of circumstances, and it matters that innocent civilians should not pay for the horrors perpetrated by Hamas. And it also matters for Israel's own security, which faces grave risk if this conflict spreads, and I think we've already seen over the weekend the potential of it spreading in the north and in the east. The humanitarian situation in Gaza is dire, and human suffering is widespread. And the Australian government has consistently called for the protection of civilian lives and safe, unimpeded and sustained
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Faruqi, first supplementary.
The coalition is morally bankrupt when it comes to Palestine, and Labour has shown itself to be heartless, gutless cowards. You are watching the massacre of thousands of Palestinians by Israel, and you are not condemning Israel. You refuse to call for an immediate ceasefire. Well, we are not going to sit here and watch you pat yourselves on the back for doing nothing. Weasel words are not going to stop war crimes. Today, we bring the people's protest into Parliament. Free, free Palestine!
Thank you, Senator Faruqi. Minister Farrell, that was a statement, so... Order. Order. Senator Hanson. Order. Order. Senator Sheldon. Did you want to respond, Minister? Sorry. Order. 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 Minister Farrell, did you wish to respond?
Yeah, President, I completely reject the implications in the question by Senator Faruqi. What has happened in the Middle East in the last month is a terrible set of circumstances. The unjustified, illegal attack on innocent Israeli citizens on the 7th of October was a terrible set of events, and of course we now see the consequences of that in Gaza and in Palestine. I don't think any particular political party seeking to make hay out of this terrible situation is going to advance the position in Australia. And whether it's the coalition trying to take a political advantage of it or the Greens, the government has a sensible...
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Sheldon.
My question is to the Minister for Trade and Tourism, Senator Farrell. Over the last 18 months, the Albanese government, Labor government, has been hard at work repairing our international relationships and standing up for Australian exporters, because we know that free and fair trade is good for jobs and good for business. Yesterday, the Minister accompanied the Prime Minister on an official visit to China, the first by an Australian Prime Minister since 2016. A key purpose of this visit was to showcase the very best of Australia's exports at the world's largest trade show in Shanghai, while continuing to advocate for removal of outstanding trade impediments. How is the Albanese Labor government stabilising our trading relationship with China, and what benefits has it brought to Australian exporters, workers and communities?
Thank you, Senator Sheldon. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Sheldon for his question, because I know he knows just how important trade is for the continued growth and prosperity of this country. And of course, the Albanese Labor government is working hard to stabilise our relationship with China. And yesterday we took another important step in the stabilisation process when I accompanied the Prime Minister on an official visit to China. China is by far our largest trading partner, worth last year around $300 billion in two-way trade. That underlines how important this relationship is to Australia. We can already see the benefits of stabilisation. We now have timber, our barley, our hay coming back into China. This means more jobs in these industries, including in Senator Sheldon's home state of New South Wales. And last month, the Prime Minister announced we have reached an agreement with China to fast-track the review of the crippling tariffs affecting Australian wine exports. Under our watch, around 95% of trade impediments by dollar value have been lifted. During my visit to Shanghai, I continued to advocate for the removal of outstanding trade impediments on Australian lobster and meat exporters. I also attended the world's largest trade show in Shanghai to showcase Australia's world-class offering in trade and tourism. Our government believes in free and fair trade. We are helping our exporters get their products back into China because more trade means more and better-paying jobs for everyday Australian workers.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Sheldon, first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister, for your hard work. And what other ways is the government standing up for the Australian exporters and everyday Australians as part of our trade negotiations that make such a difference for the country?
Thank you, Senator Sheldon. Minister Farrell.
You're welcome.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Sheldon for his brief first supplementary question. Last month I travelled to...
please resume your seat. I've called order about 3 times. I remind senators that interjections across the chamber are particularly disorderly. The minister has the floor and has a right to be heard in silence. Minister Farrell.
Last month I travelled to Japan for the G7 Trade and Investment Ministers meeting and to negotiate with the European Union to conclude a free trade agreement. Since I became Trade Minister, well, I'm about to tell you, Senator Scarr, you obviously haven't been reading the newspapers. I've been to Europe 3 times to progress a deal that benefits Australia's national interest. My job as Australia's Trade Minister is to get the best deal that we can for everyday Australians, including for our producers, our businesses, our workers and our consumers. But the deal we had on the table was not good enough, particularly for Australian farmers. Our government will continue to pursue trade agreements in the national interest to deliver benefits for everyday Australians and help our exporters diversify their trade.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Sheldon, second supplementary.
How is the government helping Australian exporters to diversify their trade while ensuring the benefits of trade are shared widely amongst the community, including workers, across our regions and all our communities in Australia?
Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Sheldon again for his important question. Since we were elected, the Albanese Labor government has made great progress helping Australian exporters to diversify their trade. We passed legislation to bring our free trade agreements with the UK and India into force. We delivered a new Southeast Asia economic strategy to 2040, helping Australian businesses create more jobs by seizing the opportunities right on our doorstep. And last week we delivered another election commitment to convene the first meeting of Australia's Trade 2040 Task Force. This task force is made up of a diverse mix of civil society, business and union representatives. Our government will continue to work with all partners to ensure the benefits of trade are shared widely amongst our community.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Roberts.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Home Affairs, Senator Watt. Australia has 300,000 hotel rooms and 140,000 Airbnbs. These are, of course, turned over many times, and there are 26 million Australians as well using these rooms for their own holidays. Into this small stock of rooms, the Australian Bureau of Statistics reports that in financial year 2022-2023, there were 5.86 million arrivals staying on average of 14 days. Minister, has this almost 500% increase in tourists under your government motivated landlords to move their property from long-term rental accommodation for everyday Australians to short-stay accommodation for hotel overflow?
Thank you, Senator Roberts. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Senator Roberts. There's a lot in that, and I'm not. It seems to be as much about tourism and housing as it is about migration, but I'll attempt to answer the question. The figures that you quoted there, I can't verify whether they're accurate or not, the 5 million number that you said, and I presume that that would include a substantial number of tourists. But if your question relates to migration figures, the government has obviously already announced a number of measures to fix what is a hopelessly broken migration system that we inherited not just from the opposition but from the minister responsible for it, being one Mr Peter Dutton. Mr Dutton was the Home Affairs Minister for the bulk of the former government and oversaw the migration system that we now inherit, that allowed for rampant exploitation, that allowed for abuse of the migration system, in some cases by education providers that we see now, and we are taking steps to try to address that. It's a shame that the opposition, who have got a lot to say now, didn't do a single thing about these issues when they were in government. We've ended the pandemic event visa, we've ended unlimited working hours for international students and work exemptions for working holiday visa holders. We've increased the temporary skilled migration income threshold, which is the first increase in a decade. So these are some of the steps that our government has taken to fix the hopelessly broken migration system that was presided over by Mr Dutton as the Home Affairs Minister. I don't know, Senator Roberts, whether that directly addresses your question, because, as I say, there was a lot in it. But we are taking steps to try to fix that migration system once and for all.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Roberts, first supplementary.
Thank you. According to departmental data, in the 2022-2023 financial year, the department issued a record 687,000 student visas. Not many have departed because, due to COVID, most have only been here less than a year. Minister, Australia has 100,000 dedicated student accommodation beds. Where are the other 500,000 or so students staying?
Thank you, Senator Roberts. Minister Watt.
Thank you, Senator Roberts. I don't think you'd expect that I'd be able to give you a precise address for every single international student who is living in Australia at the moment. But as I say, if those opposite have complaints about the number of international students who are in Australia at the moment, perhaps they could have done something about the system when they were in government for 10 years. Perhaps they could have done that. So now you don't. Now you're not supporting him. So Senator Canavan's supporting Senator Roberts, but the Liberals aren't in agreement. So where are the coalition on these issues? Nationals saying one thing, Liberals saying another, Senator and there's Watt. One of them.
Senator Minister Watt, please resume your seat. Senator Hughes.
Perhaps you could encourage Minister Watt to direct his answers through you rather than people who didn't ask the question.
I will certainly do that, Senator Hughes, and I will also direct, particularly those on my left, to stop interjecting with their comments. It is disrespectful. Minister Watt, please make your remarks to the chair.
Thank you, President. Well, President, it is interesting to see that there seems to be a split between the Liberal and the National Party on this issue. Senator Canavan and the other Nationals backing in One Nation and the Liberals wanting to run a mile. But of course, apart from fixing the migration system, this government is doing more than the former government ever did when it came to the provision of housing. And just to remind you of one measure, that Housing Australia—
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Roberts, second supplementary.
Thank you. In the last financial year, the department issued a record 441,000 business visas, plus a record 195,000 permanent migrant visas, plus another 10,000 humanitarian visas, plus another 47,000 temporary work visas. After departures, the net increase here was another 500,000. Minister, where are these 500,000 people going to stay, and is this insane level of intake the reason Australians can no longer find an affordable home?
Thank you, Senator Roberts. Minister Watt.
Thank you, Senator Roberts. Well, in your previous question, Senator Roberts, you did acknowledge that one of the reasons that we have seen a spike in migration is because there has been a return to Australia of international students and workers, and tourists for that matter, since COVID. So it's no surprise that we have seen an increase in migration numbers, given there was at least a couple of years where people basically couldn't come to Australia. There was always going to be a degree of catch-up in there. But you asked what we're doing about housing, and again, what I say is that this government has done more, certainly than the last coalition government, and probably more than any other former Australian government, to fix the issues that we do have around housing, and they are very real. We didn't see investment from the former coalition government in public housing for nearly 10 years, and we're fixing that. We're delivering the Housing Australia Future Fund, which, Senator Roberts, last time I remember you voted against. So you cared so much about housing that you voted against a fund that was going to build more homes. We're also providing more money for social housing
Minister. The
and
time
rental
for
assistance.
answering has expired. Senator Canavan. Senator Canavan, I've called you.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Madam President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister. Minister, today is day 190, or day 100 a day overdue, of the 90-day review which the Minister for Infrastructure told us would be short and sharp. More than 400 productivity-enhancing infrastructure projects have been put on hold by the government because of this review. Labor has spent $2.9 billion less on road and rail infrastructure last year than you said you would in your October budget. That was on top of the $9.6 billion in cuts to infrastructure in that budget. The Treasurer yesterday said that, and I quote, difficult decisions would need to be taken on infrastructure projects as a result of the review. In response, the Queensland Deputy Premier, Mr Miles, has said today that cutting road and rail projects in Queensland is a bad idea economically and politically. Minister, will you rule out any cuts to the Bruce Highway, Beef Roads or any other road projects in Queensland?
Thank you, Senator Canavan. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Canavan, for his question. What I will rule out is repeating the mess that the former government left us with in this space, making announcement after announcement after announcement, which was never, ever followed through on. Now, we are the Senator Canavan. We're the adults in the room. We're trying to make. We are trying to make sensible, economically sustainable decisions for this country, not simply issuing a press release and then doing nothing about it to follow through, either in terms of any construction or providing any funding for those projects. Now,
Order. Senators.
What we want to do, Senator Canavan, is get back to where we always should have been, and that is making sensible decisions on infrastructure for this country that are in the best interest of the country, whether that might be Queensland or my home state of South Australia or anywhere else in the country. And the comments by the Treasurer on the weekend are exactly to this point. We're going to make decisions. We're going to make decisions in this country that are based on the best interests of all of our citizens in our national interest, and that means doing a thorough investigation to all of those. You had 10 years. You had 10 years to fix this up, and you didn't.
Thank you, Minister. Order across the chamber. Order. Senator Brown, I've just called the chamber to order, and that includes you. Senator Canavan, first supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. The New South Wales Labor Treasurer, Mr Mookhey, said that New South Wales was doing the most to accommodate the federal government's immigration numbers, and that record immigration requires infrastructure. Minister, after months of sitting on the 90-day infrastructure review, there is speculation the PM plans to release the report while he is overseas, together with the government's hit list of cancelled projects. Will you give us a commitment that the government will not use the Melbourne Cup tomorrow as a smokescreen for Labor's road and rail project cuts?
Thank you, Senator Canavan. Minister Farrell.
Well, I don't know about you, Senator Canavan, but I'm going to use the Melbourne Cup to put a bet on, hopefully the horse I bet on will win. Look, this government has, unlike your government, unlike the government that you are a part of, Senator Canavan, this government is serious about dealing with the issue of infrastructure development, and of course the New South Wales government has an interest in that, because they want to work with a federal government that they know is serious about addressing all of the problems that you left, all of the problems that you left behind. And can I tell you this? Whether it's Melbourne Cup Day or any other day, this government will be working with the New South Wales government to absolutely get the best result for this country.
Has expired. Senator Canavan, second supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. Minister, can you guarantee that the Prime Minister will personally take responsibility for the government's cuts to infrastructure projects, and that the Prime Minister will make the announcement himself, instead of having a department quietly put out a release like he did with the Darwin port?
Thank you, Senator Canavan. Minister Farrell.
Well, I can't remember just how your government made the announcement about your support for the Darwin port, Senator Canavan, but I never heard any complaint from your government about the decision of Chief Minister Giles to lease that port to a Chinese company. But what you know about this Prime Minister is that he's actually a Prime Minister who actually knows something about infrastructure. And so when this government makes some decisions about government infrastructure spending, you can be rest assured, Senator McKenzie, that he's going to make the best decisions in the best interests of this country, because he actually knows what he's doing.
Thank you, Minister, that your time has expired. Senator McKenzie, I think I've called you more than any other senator today, and I invite you to make a contribution at some other time and not at question time. I did have a Green senator on the list next, but I'm now going to Senator Walsh.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Farrell. The Albanese government recognises that many Australians are doing it tough, feeling the pinch of rising costs as a result of global challenges. Can the Minister update the Senate on the Albanese government's cost of living relief measures to support Australians who need it most?
Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President. And can I thank Senator Walsh, because she knows firsthand some of the problems that her constituents in Victoria are facing with the cost of living issues. And we know that many Australians are doing it tough due to the economic mess left to us by the former Liberal National Government. Our government has taken a responsible approach to the budget management, enabling us to target cost of living relief and long-term investment in the Australian people, while easing inflationary pressures by half a percentage point. We've reformed childcare subsidies to better support Australian families. The ABS has confirmed that without these reforms, childcare prices would have risen by 6.7%. We're tripling bulk billing incentives, benefiting by 11.6 million Australians. We're delivering cheaper medicines for millions of Australians. We've boosted income support payments to ensure that there is a safety net for every Australian. We're building more affordable homes, making home ownership more attainable and addressing the housing affordability crisis. We're supporting new parents with expanded parental leave, ensuring families have the resources they need during this crucial time. We've created more than 560,000 jobs since we took office, a record for any new government in this country. And in the face of global uncertainties, our fiscal strategy is not just about economic numbers, it's about real-life impacts on households. We are committed to ensuring that every measure we implement brings real relief to Australians, helping them navigate these extremely challenging times.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Walsh, first supplementary.
In just the past 2 weeks, the government has delivered another initiative to support the health and well-being of Australians. This significant announcement forms the largest investment in bulk billing in the last 40 years and will no doubt make it easier for millions of Australians to see a doctor. Can the minister inform the Senate of these changes and how Australians will benefit?
Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Walsh for her first supplementary question. And can I say that in the past 2 weeks, the Albanese government has once again demonstrated its commitment to the health and well-being of Australians. We've tripled bulk billing incentives, ensuring that 11.6 million Australians, including children, pensioners and other concession holders, can gain access to essential medical services without the burden of out-of-pocket costs. This initiative is not just about health. It's a strategic fiscal measure designed to take pressure off inflation. In essence, every decision we make, every policy we implement, is designed to provide cost-of-living relief for Australians while not making the inflation challenge any worse. Taking these measures, and together they are helping Australians to shield Australians from global economic pressures while making smart and targeted investments for the long term.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Walsh, second supplementary.
As you've outlined, Minister, the Albanese Labor government has delivered relief to Australians through reducing the cost of energy bills, reducing the cost of childcare, reducing the price of hundreds of thousands of medicines and scripts, and made it easier to see the doctor. Can the minister inform the Senate about any independent analysis of how much worse off Australians would be without the Albanese government's energy assistance package?
Thank you, Senator Walsh. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thanks Senator Walsh for her second supplementary question. The global disruption, particularly in oil markets, is posing a significant inflationary challenge. Our government's targeted measures, such as our energy assistance, are designed to shield Australians from these global pressures. The ABS has confirmed that without the action taken by the Albanese Labor government, electricity prices would have risen by 18.6% in the September quarter. This action, of course, was opposed by those opposite, the same parties who failed us on energy policy time and time again and hid energy price rises, leaving us, yes, that's what you did, leaving us to clean up the mess. Our fiscal strategy is not just about immediate relief, it's about long-term stability. By implementing measures that directly counteract global pressures, we're ensuring that the
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Fawcett.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Farrell. Can the Minister guarantee that all 9 of the scheduled Hunter-class frigates, or any variation to them, will be built in Adelaide, as Labor repeatedly promised prior to the last election?
Thank you, Senator Fawcett. Minister Farrell.
Yes.
Senator Farrell, first supplementary.
Minister, thank you for that commitment from the government to all 9 frigates being built in Adelaide. Minister Miles received the Surface Fleet Review in September. Given that he has repeatedly recognised and referred to the deteriorating strategic circumstances faced by Australia and talked about the urgency that is needed, the urgent need for action, will the government actually respond to the Surface Ships Review this calendar year, or will there be further delays?
Thank you, Senator Fawcett. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President. Thank Senator Fawcett for his first supplementary question. I don't know who wrote that question for you, Senator Fawcett, but coming from South Australia, you witnessed time and time and time again the failure of the former government to do anything about providing support in the serious area of defence. Who was the government that cancelled the Naval contract? Who was the government that ended up spending leaving the Labor government to spend $6 billion to fix up the mess that you've made in the defence space?
Please resume your seat. Senator Fawcett.
Point of order on relevance. The question was about the government's response to the surface ship review, nothing about the substantial investment that the coalition government made in the defence sector.
Thank you, Senator Fawcett. I'll direct the minister to the question. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President. So, for the whole of the time that you were in government, Senator,
are you standing up?
President, but you also, on a point of order, President.
Yes.
Firstly, you don't need a point of order to draw a minister to a question, and the minister was flagrantly disregarding your drawing him to the question. I invite you to do so and encourage you to do so without always needing a point of order.
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. I will once again remind the minister of the question. Minister.
With all due respect, on the point of order, I don't think you need those gratuitous comments from the deputy leader of the.
The time has expired, Minister. Senator Fawcett, second supplementary.
Minister, there's been numerous representations from defence industry and our allies urging faster decision-making and raising concerns that the number of reviews, the cuts in real terms to budgets and the slow speed of decision-making is harming investment and the delivery of critical military capability. When and how will the government respond to those concerns?
Thank you, Senator Fawcett. Minister Farrell.
Well, we're doing this. Thank you, President, and thank Senator Fawcett for his second supplementary question. You know, we're finally back on track here. All of the chopping and changing in the defence space under your government, that's behind us now. That's well, you've asked.
Senator Fawcett.
Point of order on relevance. The question was about the fact that the government won't even define a track, not whether or not they think they're back on track. He's not being relevant to the question that was asked.
I'll remind the minister of the question. Thank you, Senator Fawcett. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President. Look, I don't think I could be more relevant in pointing out the failure after failure after failure of the former government.
Senator,
let's remember,
Minister Farrell. I'll draw your attention to Senator Fawcett's question. Did you still want to make a point of order?
Yes, point of order. The minister is misleading the House.
Oh, that's not a point of order, Senator Fawcett, and you're well aware of that, Minister Farrell.
No, that's the best he can do. Look. Under Defence Minister Miles, we've got a person that we know we can trust. He's a safe pair of hands in this place, and Australians know that this is a government that is serious about ensuring their long-term defence needs.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Green.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister for Emergency Management, Senator Watt. Minister, for the past few weeks, I, like many Australians, have been monitoring the increasing fire activity across Queensland, particularly the devastating fire at Western Downs, but also, of course, closer to home in northwest Queensland. Can the minister update the Senate on current conditions and what the Albanese government is doing to support these impacted communities during this challenging time?
Minister Watt.
Thanks, President, and thanks, Senator Green. And I know you have been taking a great interest in those fires happening across Queensland. Can I start by again acknowledging the tragic deaths of 3 personnel in a plane crash while undertaking Queensland Fire and Emergency Service tasked line scanning over the weekend, as well as 2 people who died in the fires in Queensland last week. I extend my condolences to all who are grieving these tragic losses. It's a stark and devastating reminder of the danger we are facing this summer. Today, we are seeing a reprieve in conditions across Queensland ahead of extreme fire danger in parts of the state for the rest of the week, with 8 fires currently burning at an advice level. The worst of the fire activity was around Tara, where more than 30,000 hectares has been burned. It is reported that numerous structures have been destroyed and damaged across the state. The full extent will only become known when damage assessments are completed. On Tuesday last week, I travelled to Dalby to understand the full extent of the impact. While I was there, I met with the Mayor and Deputy Mayor and received a briefing from local authorities. I also visited the evacuation centre and met with evacuees, as well as representatives from housing support and a range of government and non-government services who are doing a fantastic job looking after people who have been displaced. We are in lockstep across all 3 levels of government in our support for these impacted communities. The Albanese government quickly activated the Australian Government Disaster Recovery Payment and Disaster Recovery Allowance. That's been opened for people who live and work in the Western Downs and Toowoomba local government areas. The AGDRP has a one-off payment of $1,000 per eligible adult and $400 per eligible child who have suffered a significant loss as a result of the fires, including a severely damaged or destroyed home or a serious injury. The Disaster Recovery Allowance provides up to 13 weeks of federal income support to assist eligible employees or sole traders who experience a loss of income as a result of the disaster.
Senator Green, first supplementary.
Thank you, President, and I thank the Minister for the update. While the fire activity has been significant in Queensland, I also know that there have been fires across the Northern Territory and New South Wales. Minister, how is the Albanese government helping those fire-affected communities in these states?
Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. Currently, most of Australia is experiencing a reprieve in dangerous weather, with the exception of the Northern Territory, where the Barkly North region is experiencing extreme fire danger. And I know I've had a lot of contact with Senator McCarthy in particular, who's very concerned about the impact of those fires, which have been going for some time in the Northern Territory. Over the weekend, we saw fires continue to burn across New South Wales and the Northern Territory, with lightning causing significant fire activity in Western Australia and the Northern Territory as well. As of a short time ago, there was one fire burning at a Watch and Act level in Western Australia, with all other fires across the country burning at advice or below. We're working with all state and territory governments to provide the support that they need to help their communities. In New South Wales, we've activated financial support for the local government areas of Clarence Valley, Inverell, Kyogle, Tenterfield, Mid-Western, Kempsey, Mid-Coast and Port Macquarie Hastings in recognition of the fire damage that's been impacted on those areas, and in Victoria assistance has been activated as well.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Green.
Thank you, President. Minister, as we move from spring into summer, what steps is the Commonwealth taking to ensure that we are prepared for an increase in natural hazards and disasters across Australia?
Thank you, Senator Green. Minister.
Thank you, President. Since the election of the Albanese government, we've been taking many steps to ensure that Australia is much better prepared for natural disasters than we have been in the past. We created one unified National Emergency Management Agency rather than the 2 that existed under the former government. We've created the Disaster Ready Fund, which is already investing in disaster mitigation across the country. And I'm pleased to say that a bit over a week ago, I joined with the member for Boothby in South Australia to announce Humani Huts as the supplier of mobile emergency shelter camps, a key component of what will be the first ever National Emergency Management Stockpile. This capability will support the stockpile needs of states and territories. It'll have 3 main components: a physical stockpile, including, as I say, temporary housing, but also over time things like water purification equipment and other needs. There'll be a standing offer panel to be able to meet needs urgently, and we'll be entering into a memorandum of understanding with governments as well. It'll provide reliable, readily deployable, life-sustaining resources for communities.
Senator O'Sullivan.
Thank you very much, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Farrell. Should the Chinese government's attempted coercive trade sanctions against Australia be considered a reason not to support their membership of the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership at this time?
Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank the senator for his question. The CPTPP, as it's known, has recently acceded to the request of the United Kingdom to join that group, and only a few weeks ago that request was acceded to. Senator Scarr, look, it's important. It's important that you put these questions into perspective. Having dealt with the issue of the United Kingdom, of course, the next question is which country might next join the group. And as you say, China has put in a request to join that group, but so have 5 other countries, including Taiwan, including Ukraine, including a number of other countries, and those issues now have to be dealt with, and at the next meeting of that group, which will occur next week in San Francisco, I expect that the group will deal with the issue of how to progress future requests for accession to that group. The reality of the situation is that it does require.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator O'Sullivan, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Have any other partners raised concerns with the Albanese government's more positive tone about China joining the CPTPP?
Minister Farrell.
Look, I don't think it's appropriate to conduct in public discussions about what other countries may or may not have said to us. As I indicated to you, next week this group is meeting on the sidelines of the APEC meeting in San Francisco, and I'm sure all of the countries will, at that meeting, have an opportunity to express their point of view on where we head next with the CPTPP.
Thank you, Minister. Senator O'Sullivan, second supplementary.
During his discussions with the Chinese government, has the minister given any undertakings in relation to Australia's consideration of foreign investment applications or raised the review into the Port of Darwin? And if so, in what context did the minister discuss foreign investment of the Port of Darwin?
Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President. Thank you for the second supplementary question. No, and on that note, I would request that further questions be put onto the notice paper.
Thank you.